The American Revolution wasn't just a war, it was the birth of a new nation. Over 8 years of battles, diplomacy, and sacrifice, 13 colonies broke free from the British Empire and created the United States of America. But this story began long before 1776. The American Revolution was an insurrection carried out by 13 of Great Britain's North American colonies that began in 1775 and ended with a peace treaty in 1783. The colonies won political independence and went on to form the United States of America. The war followed more than a decade of growing estrangement between the British Crown and a large and influential segment of its North American colonies that was caused by British attempts to assert greater control over colonial affairs after having long adhered to a policy of salutary neglect. Until early in 1778, the conflict was a civil war within the British Empire, but afterward it became an international war as France, in 1778, and Spain, in 1779, joined the colonies against Britain. Meanwhile, the Netherlands, which provided both official recognition of the United States and financial support for it, was engaged in its own war against Britain. See Anglo-Dutch Wars. From the beginning, sea power was vital in determining the course of the war, lending to British strategy a flexibility that helped compensate for the comparatively small numbers of troops sent to America, and ultimately enabling the French to help bring about the final British surrender at Yorktown in 1781. The American colonies fought the war on land with essentially two types of organization: the Continental, National Army, and the state militias. The total number of the former provided by quotas from the states throughout the conflict was 231,971 soldiers, and the militias totaled 164,087. At any given time, however, the American forces seldom numbered over 20,000. In 1781, there were only about 29,000 insurgents under arms throughout the country. The war was therefore one fought by small field armies. Militias, poorly disciplined and with elected officers, were summoned for periods usually not exceeding 3 months. The terms of Continental Army service were only gradually increased from 1 to 3 years, and not even bounties, and the offer of land kept the army up to strength. Reasons for the difficulty in maintaining an adequate Continental force included the colonists' traditional antipathy toward regular armies, the objections of farmers to being away from their fields, the competition of the states with the Continental Congress to keep men in the militia, and the wretched and uncertain pay in a period of inflation. By contrast, the British Army was a reliable, steady force of professionals. Since it numbered only about 42,000, heavy recruiting programs were introduced. Many of the enlisted men were farm boys, as were most of the Americans, while others came from cities where they had been unable to find work. Still others joined the army to escape fines or imprisonment. The great majority became efficient soldiers as a result of sound training and ferocious discipline. The officers were drawn largely from the gentry and the aristocracy and obtained their commissions and promotions by purchase. Though they received no formal training, they were not so dependent on a book knowledge of military tactics as were many of the Americans. British generals, however, tended toward a lack of imagination and initiative, while those who demonstrated such qualities often were rash. The colony of Massachusetts was seen by King George III and his ministers as the hotbed of disloyalty. After the Boston Tea Party, December 16, 1773, Parliament responded with the Intolerable Acts, 1774, a series of punitive measures that were intended to cow the restive population into obedience. The 1691 charter of the Massachusetts Bay Colony was abrogated, and the colony's elected ruling council was replaced with a military government under General Thomas Gage, the commander of all British troops in North America. At Gage's headquarters in Boston, he had 4 regiments, perhaps 4,000 troops under his command, and Parliament deemed that force sufficient to overawe the population in his vicinity. William Ledge, 2nd Earl of Dartmouth, Secretary of State for the Colonies, advised Gage that the violence committed by those who have taken up arms in Massachusetts have appeared to me as the acts of a rude rabble, without plan, without concert, without conduct. A small force now, if put to the test, would be able to conquer them with greater probability of success than might be expected of a larger army, if the people should be suffered to form themselves upon a more regular plan. Gage, for his part, thought that no fewer than 20,000 troops would be adequate for such an endeavor, but he acted with the forces he had at hand. Beginning in the late summer of 1774, Gage attempted to suppress the warlike preparations throughout New England by seizing stores of weapons and powder. Although the colonials were initially taken by surprise, they soon mobilized. Groups such as the Sons of Liberty uncovered advanced details of British actions, and committees of correspondence aided in the organization of countermeasures. Learning of a British plan to secure the weapons cache at Fort William and Mary, an undermanned army outpost in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, Boston's Committee of Correspondence dispatched Paul Revere on December 13, 1774, to issue a warning to local allies.